So this tutorial is going to walk you through how to do the two-dimensional geometry. So we're going to be using AutoCAD. We're going to be using a bunch of different tools and making some basic geometric shapes. We're going to be making them very precisely. First thing to just double check is make sure up at the top here, assignment 1, two-dimensional geometry, this should be your block, and of course that should be your last name. If that's not like that, close the file, change the file name, reopen it up so you can see up here this will be your block and this will be your last name. Very important. Okay, so here are my templates, and you can see I'm going to use the center scroll button to zoom in and zoom out. So right now I'm just using the scroll button in the middle, zoom in, zoom out. Now if I also want to pan it, I'm going to press and hold the scroll button. That allows me to move everything around. So it allows me to move in. So for example, if I want to just focus on the circle, I can scroll in and I can pan in on the circle. So I'll be working on that in a minute. Now another thing I need to do is to take a look down here, lower left hand corner. So these are some of the guides and helpers. The idea is if they are colored white, they're off, and you can see right there the drawing grid right now is off. If I click on that, it turns my drawing grid back on, and you'll notice that little icon is blue. So I'm going to click on that again, turn that off. I want the snap mode off. This is dynamic input. You'll see what that does in a bit. This is restrict cursor orthogonally, which basically means you can only move your cursor left or right or up or down. That can come in really handy sometimes. This restricts the cursor to specific angles. We'll just turn that off for now. Okay, not going to worry about that. If you don't see some of these icons, don't worry about it, or just call me for help. Here's this one. We do want this one. Show snapping reference lines on. I'll explain that one in a bit. This is our most important one though. This is called OSnap or Object Snap. Now that's going to be on, and I'm also going to make sure to do this. This little down arrow indicates that I need more things here. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to bring up this menu. Now anything that is checked, that means I'm going to snap to those points. So you recall if you did the basic logo, that snap to end point is usually on, and that means you can just start drawing right at the end of another line. Well, I want to turn on midpoint. I'd like to be able to draw to the middle of a line. Center is useful, and I'm also later going to use quadrant. I'm going to turn that one on too. And don't just ignore the other ones. The other ones are useful. Actually, I'm going to turn this one on to perpendicular. So make sure that those are checked and the rest are not. And then just click anywhere, and that closes that menu. Okay, so first of all, let's start off with the circle. We're going to start up here with our drawing tools. You can see there's how I can draw a line. A polyline is like a line, but it all works as one single object. Lines just draw individual line segments. Very similar, but different. Circles, well, circles are circles. We're going to click on that. Okay, now the idea here is that when you do a command, read the box next to the cursor. It'll tell you what it's asking for. Or, way down here in the command line, right now it's asking for the center point for the circle. There are options right here. We'll do that a little bit later. So first of all, the center point for the circle, what I want to do is I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to snap right to the center of this line, and you'll see this is the midpoint of this green line right here. Now an object snap means this is where I'm going to put my point. So I'm going to put my center of my circle right here. So I'm going to click and I'll drag outwards. And now you can see I'm dragging outwards and I'm making the radius of the circle. So I want to type in my radius, and you can see there's a little box on the screen with a number that gets bigger or smaller depending on how I change the radius. Well, that is the exact radius of my circle. I'm going to type in the number 30 on the keyboard, so 30, because I want my circle to be 30 millimeters in diameter. And there's my circle. Okay, next up, triangle. We want to draw an equilateral triangle, but here's the criteria. The triangle is going to be the same height as the circle. Okay, so how do we get from here to here? Well, there's a few different ways we could do this. Here's one. I'm going to start off with some guidelines. I'm going to take a line, and I'm going to start drawing it here. Now, you remember I turned on the quadrant snap? Okay, so this is a quadrant of a circle, and you can see if I hover over that, I'm not clicking, it says quadrant. The quadrant of a circle, think about north, south, east, and west. Sometimes these are very handy little points to snap to. I'm going to start here, I'm going to click, I'm going to draw a line. Now here's another thing that is happening. Notice how it is helping me out by drawing this horizontal line. And I'm going to go right over to here, and now this line is perpendicular to my green guideline. And I'm going to click, and then I'm going to finish that off by pressing enter. There's a little guideline right there. So it is exactly at the top of the circle, and it goes perfectly horizontal. I'll do the same thing over here. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag, and again you can see how I can get the length of the circle. I can also set it to exactly 0 degrees, perfectly horizontal. Doesn't matter what the length of this is. I'm going to click and then I'm going to press enter, and there's my line. So now I've got a guide for how tall my triangle is going to be. The top of my triangle is going to be right here, bottom's going to be right here. Well, next up what I need is another line. This is going to be part of the triangle. This is actually going to be the side of the triangle. Don't worry, I'm going to make this vertical. I'm going to start down here. I'm going to go way up here, right up to the top, and again, I'm going to make sure that this is perpendicular. You can see how I lined up all these little guidelines ahead of time, and that's just going to make my life a little easier. Okay, going to press enter. All right, well, this is going to be the side of my triangle, but it's still straight up and down. That's not going to help much with the triangle. What I need to do is rotate this. So I'm going to select my line. Now, selecting something means clicking on it once, and you'll see these little blue dots appear. These are called grips. If you've selected something, you'll notice it's kind of highlighted, it's glowing blue, and it's got these little grips on it. And now I'm going to go up here to some of my tools. I'm going to select rotate. Now, you can select an object and then rotate it, or you can choose rotate and then select the things you want to rotate. Either way is fine. So I'm going to choose the rotate option. So rotate just means spin something around a point. And you can see right in the example here, if I hover over top of it, there's that little table that's red, table and chairs, and it gets rotated by 90 degrees. So that's all rotate is. I'm going to click on rotate. Now it's asking me for a base point. Well, since this is the top of my triangle, it's not going to move. I'm going to click on that point right there. And now you can see I've got a little handle, and I can drag that around and I can rotate it. Well, how much do I want to rotate it by? Well, an equilateral triangle is a 60-60-60 angle triangle, 60 degrees on each corner. So I'm going to rotate it by half of that, which is 30. I'm going to type in 30, and now I've rotated my line to be the side of my triangle. Okay, now I need the other side of my triangle. Now I could do that over again. I'm going to use a different command. I'm going to use the mirror command. You remember I said I could select something and then do the command, or I can do the command and then select something. So I'll do the command first and then I'll select something. So I'm going to select mirror, and now it's asking me to select objects. Now notice that's plural, objects. I can do this with more than one thing. Well, I'm going to select this, and again, notice first of all I'm hovering over it and it starts glowing white. When I click on it, it turns blue. So that means it's been selected. So hover over it is white, click on it, it turns blue. But I don't want that. I just want this one thing. Okay, when I am finished selecting, I'm going to press enter. You can also click the right mouse button. Is also the same thing as pressing enter. And that's really nice because it means you don't necessarily have to take your hand off of the mouse. Okay, now it's asking me for the first point of a mirror line. Well, I have to specify a mirror. Well, I want this line to be flipped over to the other side. So I'm going to start right here. I'm going to click on this end point right here, and I'm going to drag down, and you notice there is my mirror line. That orange dotted line is my mirror line. It's actually reflecting. It's like a mirror. It's reflecting that line across that. So I'm going to drag that straight down again, and you can see that it's helping me. It knows that I want to go straight down. and I'm just going to click. And now it's asking me, do I want to erase source objects? Well, that's basically, did I want to mirror this and get rid of this? No or yes? Well, I'm going to pick no. And there's my triangle. Problem now is I've got too much stuff up here. I want to get rid of some of this. So I'm going to use my erase command first of all. What erase does is, well, it erases things. I'm going to select the erase command. Now it says select objects. Okay, so notice now that is grayed. If I hover over it, I'm going to click on that. So I want to erase that, and I'm going to press enter. Okay, so that top bar got erased. I don't need that. Now, I didn't erase these other parts because the problem is if I erase that, I lose the side of my triangle. If I erase that, I lose the bottom of my triangle. Well, I've already got those there. All I want to do is cut bits of these off. So for that, I'm going to use this command. This is called trim. Trims objects to meet the edges of other objects. Okay, so I'm going to select trim, and I'm going to select this, click, press enter. Now I need to select more things. I'm going to select this, click, and I'm going to select this, click. Okay, I'm done selecting. I press enter. Okay, now select objects to trim. I'm going to hover over this, and notice how it turns just that one little part gray, and as soon as I click on it, it erases it. Same thing over here. Trim, click, click, and click. And finally, I'm done. Press enter, and there's my triangle. Triangle is exactly the same height as the circle. Only number I typed in was 30 degrees. The square, there's a bunch of ways to make the square. I'll show you one way. This is, I'm going to use the rotate and the copy command. So I'm going to start with a line, and I need a line that is the same height as my triangle. I want my square to be 60 units high. So I'm going to start with a line. I'm going to use my triangle as a little guide. And there's my first line. I'm going to press enter. Okay, and I'm going to take this line. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move it over to my square. So to move it over, I'm going to use the move command. The move command is up here. I'm going to select move. Select objects. What do I want to move? I want to click on this. It's the only thing I want to move, so I'm going to press enter. Now, specify base point. Okay, so where am I going to grab it from? Well, I could grab it from the bottom. I could click on the bottom. And problem is, how am I going to get it exactly over top of this line where I want it? Okay, that's a little tricky. So I'm going to press escape. The escape key is the upper left-hand corner of your keyboard. That cancels the command. I'll try that again. I'm going to select move. I'm going to click enter. Okay, now I could grab it from the top, and again, there's nothing to put it to. I'm going to grab it by its midpoint right here. Here's the midpoint. I'm going to click, I'm going to move it over here, and I'm going to put it onto the midpoint. Press enter. Okay, so now there's the height of my square. The next thing I'm going to do another rotate command. And I'm going to rotate this by 90 degrees. But, so again, select objects, press enter. Specify base point. I'm going to specify the midpoint right here. Now, what I want to do is I want to rotate it, but I want to keep that vertical one there too. So you notice down here in the command line, there is a word that says copy. So what I can do is I can click on that, and what's going to happen is when I rotate it by 90 degrees, and I can just rotate around to here, snap to the endpoint. Okay. Now I've got my two lines. So I rotated and copied at the same time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of commands. Now I don't have a square, I have a cross, but I know that the sides of my square should go right here, and the top and bottom should go here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this line, and I'm going to move it. I'm going to select it, press enter. Where am I going to move it from? I'm going to move it from its midpoint. to the end point of this line right here. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this. I'm going to repeat move. If you right click anywhere, it'll show you your recent input. So there's all the words, all the things I just used. So I'm going to use move again. I'm going to select this one, press enter. I'm going to start from this point right here. I'm going to drag it up to there. Okay. And now I'm going to do a mirror command. I'm going to select this line and this line, press enter. My mirror is going to be from this point to this point. Erase source objects, no, and there's my square. Now there are about a dozen ways I could have made that square. That's just one of them. Usually what you want to try and do is make the square in the most efficient way possible. Okay, for a rectangle, what I want to do with a rectangle is I want to make a rectangle that is half the size of my square. And I want to center it right here. So for that, I'm going to use the rectangle command. Oh, look at that. There is a rectangle command. I could have just drawn the square using the rectangle command. Only problem is I have to specify the corner point. So I would have had to figure out where this corner point was first. So here's how I'm going to do my rectangle. I'm going to start right here at the midpoint. I'm going to drag up to here, and I'm going to end up right there. There's my end point right there. Now, notice this, that I drew my rectangle over top of my square. So these two things are right over top of each other. Sometimes it's really hard to tell. You cannot tell exactly where one line ends and the other begins unless you highlight them. So that's a bit of a problem with this. Sometimes that's another reason why we use layers sometimes. So you notice here on the layers, we have all of these different layers. Think about layers as, and notice that some have a little lock next to them. Why are there lock next to them? Well, the locked layers are things I don't want to change. So you notice I can go here. If I don't like my rectangle, I can select it and I can press delete and it's gone. Oh, I don't like this mark. I'm going to select it, press delete, nothing happened. That's because this is locked, and you can actually see there's a little padlock next to it when I highlight that. So I would have to, if I wanted to change that, I would have to unlock that layer. Now, I need my rectangle back. So how am I going to get that? Well, let's see. The last thing I did was an erase. I'm going to undo that erase. There. Had to do that twice because I used that command twice. There is a list of commands, and you can undo as many as are saved there. Okay, so now I want to take my rectangle and I am going to copy it. So, or actually I'm going to move it. Now, I need to move it, so I'm going to select it first, press enter. Now, here's the tricky part. I want to select it right by the center, but I don't have a reference point right in the midpoint of my triangle, but I can make one. I'm going to move over here to the midpoint, and I'm not going to click, but I am going to drag across, and you'll see that little dotted line it creates? It's creating a little fake sort of reference line. Now, I need that back. See the little green plus? That's still there. I'm going to go down, I'm going to select the midpoint down here, and again, I'm not going to click on it, but I'm going to drag upwards. And you can see there's a little green crosshair right there as well. If I move up to my center now, suddenly it will snap to the exact center point of my rectangle. And I'm going to click there, zoom out, zoom back in, and paste it right there. So now I have a rectangle that is exactly half the size of my square. Okay, last little thing we want to do is we're going to make a hexagon and an octagon. Now to make the hexagon and the octagon, we want to do them inside and outside of a circle. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to select my circle, press enter. My base point, I'm going to grab it from the midpoint of this triangle, or the midpoint of this line. I'm going to go down here, I'm going to click, I'm going to place one there. Now notice I still have my circle, I can make as many copies as I want. I'm going to put one there, and I've finished copying, so I'm going to press enter to finish copying. Now obviously that's not a hexagon and an octagon, but I need these circles. You'll see why in a second. My last command up here, you can see it says rectangle. Now if I pull down on this little arrow here, now I can choose to make a polygon. So polygon is just something with multiple sides. So I'm going to select polygon. And the first thing it's asking me is for the number of sides. Now a hexagon is 6 sides, so I'm going to enter in 6. Center of the polygon right here. Now I'm going to choose inscribed in circle first. And then I'm going to choose the radius of my circle. I'm going to go out to a quadrant right here. There's my hexagon, and I'm going to click. So you can see inside the circle, the corner points of my hexagon meet the outer edge of my circle. All right, I'm going to right click. I'm going to repeat polygon. Number of sides for an octagon is 8. Center, again, right here. This time I'm going to choose circumscribed about the circle. And I'm going to choose my radius. And now you can see that, if I select that, now you can see the octagon is centered outside of my circle. You can see my circle touches the octagon right there and there. One last thing, we haven't done this already, is you do need to put your name down here. So this is text. To edit the text, you put your cursor over top of it, make sure it's highlighted, double click, wait for just a second until you see this. As soon as you see this, you can backspace and you can type in your name right here. And then don't forget to change the date too. Again, highlight it, double click, wait just a second, there it is. Works just like a word processor, backspace, and today's date right here. All right. Last thing to do is, of course, we need to save this. Here's the little save icon up here. Saves the current drawing. If you click on that, it will save it. Now, if you forget to save or you change something afterwards, even if you just zoom out a little bit, here's what's going to happen. When you quit the program, it will say, do you want to save your changes? So you can save it yes,